Vážení a milí hosté, nebo přesněji možná řečeno, vážení a milí zástupci několika středních škol, včetně 2 gymnázií, vážení a milí zástupci několika fakult Univerzity Karlovy a Akademie věd, a vážení a milí další hosté, které jsem zatím nejmenoval, neboť jsem si od registračního stolku všechny vaše afiliace nedonesl. Mimochodem tím trošku naznačuji i kdo je v našem publiku, čili ke komu směřovat dnešní řeč. Buďte vítáni. Jmenuji se Marcel Kraus a jsem toho času manažerem projektu HYB4 City, který vám tento program připravuje. Nacházíte se v budovách náležející hlavnímu městu Praha a obsah, který jak si zajišťuje Univerzita Karlova ve společném partnerství v kampusu Hybernská. Já vás tady srdečně vítám i za realizační tým. Všichni jste znáte Dášu Sefton, ale i další moje kolegy a kolegyně, kteří tady budou různě fotit. Dáša Sefton si zaslouží potlesk. Chtěl bych vás tady zkrátka přivítat na dnešním programu, který se jmenuje Zvuk a hudba. Je mi to velmi blízké, já sám jsem bývalý, řekněme, umělec, zpěvák, který toho ale včas nechal, aby se přeučil na ekonoma a pedagoga, ale zvuk a hudba jsou mý velmi oblíbený veličiny. Jo, to zní hezky. A od dnešního večera si slibuju velmi mnoho, neboť podtitul může znít i Hudba léčí. A já se potřebuji vyléčit, protože Bůh ví proč. Nevím, jak se to stalo, jak k tomu došlo, ale od včerejšího rána mě bolí v kříži. A já si od toho slibuju, že se vyléčím. Já vám to řeknu po dnešní akci. Budu tady celou dobu, budu se na to koukat, budu přijímat vibrace, budu přijímat zvuk tím prostorem a rád si poslechnu i další jaksi hudební příspěvky. Chtěl bych vám také říct ve velmi velké krátkosti, no to tak nevypadá, kdo jsou našimi hosty a potom bych je požádal, až přijdou a přijde jejich čas, aby se blíže představili. Máme tady totiž hosty 2 velmi vzácné. Jako první vystoupí doktor Michael Londesborough. Teď bych si řekl, že ano, že by měl nastat potlesk. Dr. Michael Londesborough. Yeah. Z Ústavu anorganické chemie Akademie věd České republiky je držitelem mnoha ocenění, nejen za vědu a výzkum, ale i za její popularizaci. A máme tady dále dalšího vzácnou hostku, paní doktorku Markétu Garlichovou z 1. lékařské fakulty Univerzity Karlovy, která je rovněž muzikoterapeutka a autorka knih Hudba léčí, velmi na to spolehám, a muzikoterapie v praxi. Dámy a pánové, přeju vám příjemný zážitek.
Thank you very much for the introduction, and is it okay if I speak English? I've been asked to speak English this evening. Is everybody comfortable with that? Good. If anybody does not understand, you may ask, and I can help out a bit in Czech or repeat it slowly in English. But the star for this evening is a lady who's in front of me here, whose book I hold in my hands, Mrs. Markéta Garlichová, and Hudba léčí. It's the first time I've seen this book that was presented to me by Dasha earlier. And so I had a bit of time to quickly look into it. And the first chapter is Najdi svůj pohyb. And it says, first line to the book, pohyb patří k podstatě přirozeného lidského chování. And it's my job to show to you all this evening that pohyb patří i k podstatě hudbu a zvuku. So I'm going to show you all that it's all about movement. Whether you've got a bad back or you want to understand about the science of sound and music, then you have to know something about movement. And in the case of sound and music, it's about the movement of molecules. And if you understand how the movement of molecules works and how it interacts with sound and light, you can actually form some interesting technologies, of which I'm going to show you as well. But to start with, can I ask you all just to close your eyes and relax? And Tomáši, yes, can you play a piece of music? Just close your eyes, and I want you just to allow yourself to enjoy listening to the music. And whilst you've got your eyes closed, I'd like to think about how is it possible you can actually hear this music? What is going on? What is the interaction between the speakers and your minds that allow you to enjoy the music? Well, does anybody recognize that piece of music? It was written by an English composer, Elgar, and it's called Salut de Amor, or a Pozdrav lásky. And the reason why I chose this piece of music is not because it's my favorite, but it's because it's the first piece of music that was actually recorded onto a recording of that piece was made, which then could be listened to by anybody. It's the first example of the democracy of music. Previously, if you wanted to enjoy music, you had to find somebody who could play an instrument and sit and pay money, usually, to listen to the music. So music was quite almost an elite activity. You had to have the money or the ability to be with somebody who could pay for musicians to play to you music. After the scientific discovery that you can record music. You can record music and keep a copy, a code of that music, which can be reproduced at any time that you wish or want. Then that led to the democracy of music. More people could listen and enjoy music and perhaps even be cured of ailments by music. That's why that piece of music is very important. How did they record this piece of music? Well, they used something which is not too dissimilar from this instrument here. Maybe the youngest girl at the back probably doesn't even know what this is at all. But this gramophone is an instrument which can not only play music, but also record music. Depending, you just flick a switch, as it were. You see, we can record music because music and sounds are physical. There's a physical nature to it. When you closed your eyes and listened to Salut de Amor, there was a physical interaction between that music and you. It's not just a sound, it's a physical interaction between you. What it is, it's about the movement of air molecules around us. So at the moment, between you and I are many, many, many billions and billions and billions of molecules of air. And these molecules of air are randomly moving around. But what music does is it begins to organize these molecules of air into patterns, into beautiful mathematically related patterns, into structures. The air molecules around us, we cannot see it happening, but what we actually hear is the organization of these molecules of air into structures. And these structures change depending on what the sounds are. And some of these structures are very nice to our brains for some reason. I'm sure you might be talking more about that in the next part. Okay, so we've got these movements of air molecules, and if I take this apart a little bit, if we have a big horn like this, then the reason why it's so big is that we can collect these movements of air molecules. So if the air molecules are beginning to organize themselves and vibrate and push energy, if we can have a big surface, we can collect these movements of air molecules into this and concentrate the energy, and then take that concentrated energy into something that can vibrate like a needle. And if we allow that vibrating needle, which is vibrating at the same frequency as the air movements, the pressure waves that are striking through the horn, and if we allow that needle to go up and down according to that movement on something soft, it leaves a track of hills and valleys as it goes up and down at the same frequency as the vibrating air molecules. And therefore we can make a recording of that sound. And that recording's here. So this is the recording, the hills and valleys of the vibrations of sound, the physical nature of the music. So that's like the recording, that's the code, the DNA of the music. And then all we have to do is to reproduce, we allow it to express itself by putting vibrations back out into the air. And we don't even need, I can strip this down, we don't need all the fancy bits. It's actually very simple science. So if I just use this rotating table just to rotate our recording of sound, and then all I need here, I can use anything. I can use anything almost. This is an X-ray of my teeth. As you can see here, when I was a young person, I ate a bit too much chocolate and sweets. But I can use the X-ray of my teeth to reproduce, to express this musical DNA, this recording, this code. Okay, you've got to listen very carefully, and you try and tell me what we're listening to. Anybody recognise it? Beatles. Indeed it was, that's the Beatles. So that's A Hard Day's Night. And you can see here, so we've got, if I get this a bit better. Yeah. You can hear that? So it really is that simple. The technology is nothing particularly complicated. It might look it, but all it is that recording of the vibrations of the air, which are recorded on a soft material when it's hot, the warm PVC. When it cools down, it stays there, it's recorded. And then all you need to do is take those vibrations back. And you can use anything, even an X-ray. Those vibrations then go into the air and they begin to organize the molecules around you. And you can detect these tiny little differences in pressure. And how it's working, maybe can I ask the two of, and also your sister here to help me at the front here for a little bit, so I can just show. Come forward. And also Mummy. Come on, Mummy. Okay, so as I said, there's many trillions and trillions of molecules of air amongst us, but here we've got 3 examples. If you can imagine, they're molecules of air. If you turn 90 degrees and hold each other by your... So here are air molecules. Now, when I produce a sound, that's a vibration, an oscillation, and that energy goes forward and back like a wave. So this is the pressure wave that we see. And so every time I have an oscillation, a vibration, that energy is transmitted along the medium of the air. Thank you very much, molecules of air. And these waves of sound are what are generating music. And if you compose it, if you put these waves together skillfully, skládat, in Czech the verb is to, you skládat hudbu. It's the same, you're putting together waves, and you're finding the waves which are complementary to each other, which sound nice, are in harmony for our ears. But it's all the mathematicals, the harmonics is a mathematical concept. It's the waves and how the air molecules are organized which produce these wondrous effects on us. Now, that also means that if we change the medium between you and me, so at the moment there's air, it's about 80% nitrogen, 20% oxygen, that's vibrating when I speak. If we change that composition chemically, it changes as well the sound. So I have here a different gas, which is not nitrogen and oxygen.
And if I put that gas inside me now, then the vibrations of my vocal cords are reduced in speed by 3 times. And you can hear the effect. So by reducing the vibrational speed, it changes the wave which goes onto your ears and you hear a difference. What's interesting is people often find this funny, which is a good question maybe you can speak about later. Why is it funny that I have just because I have a different voice? It's because what I'm playing with is your brain's očekávání, the expectations of your brains. You expect something different than what you hear, and for that reason it's funny. Now, the expectation of what you hear and what you actually hear is key to dopamine releasage in our appreciation of music, for example. It's the reason why a Westerner can go for the first time to Japan or to China and listen to their music, and we don't understand it. The harmonies are not there. Whereas we listen to European classical music, and it's because we've got these expectations in our brain. When the expectations are realized, we get a little dopamine hit. Essentially, we're telling ourselves, oh, we're pretty clever. I expected that next key, or that next note. And it's this which is producing very comforting thoughts inside your brain. And again, it's about your brain as being happy with itself at recognizing mathematical patterns in the movement of air molecules. Okay, would you like to see some of these movements in real life? Because I think as part of my job as a scientist is really to make visible what is normally invisible. And the sounds coming from my vocal cords, these vibrations, these oscillations, you can hear, but you cannot see. But we can use instruments to help you see them in the same way as scientists use all sorts of instruments in our laboratories to see things which are normally invisible. And I think that's the key to successful scientific research, is to make things visible which are invisible in normal circumstances. Now, this is a homemade scientific instrument. It's a steel tube, which is empty. Well, not quite empty, it's full of air molecules. And at one end here, I've stuck a rubber glove over the end to form a flexible membrane. So if I make some noises, some sounds, then the pressure wave of molecules inside the tube is generated, okay? At the top, all on the top, I've drilled holes every 2 centimeters, okay? And at the end here, it's linked to a canister of propane gas, which is flammable. So at the moment, you can hear it. The propane gas is going inside and pushing out the air molecules. Now, if I add a bit of air, if I add a bit of fire to start it off, then the propane gas is mixing with the oxygen in the air, and we have this effect. We have little flames. Now, at home, we call this sometimes vědecký buštostroj, because you can have a table here and have a beer, and you can opékat bušty. But the real reason is because it allows me to visualize sound waves. Okay, so what's important now is if I add some sound, I have to hit the right note. Okay, so the sound wave that I'm going to produce, the pressure wave, has to be of a certain wavelength that is related to the length of the tube. Either the full length, or half the length, or quarter, or an eighth, or a 16th, etc. If I do so, you will see a standing wave. You'll see the physical nature of sound. Wish me luck. Can you see that? The actual wave nature. This is proof that sound is a wave. Did you notice that
not each wave is the same. So if I had a if I had a deep tone, then the wave was longer. And if I had a higher tone, the wave was shorter. I'll try and demonstrate that. So, so the wavelength, the distance between peaks, which we call the wavelength, changes according to the tone. Now, if I add volume, the wave goes up, the amplitude increases. So this simple demonstration, this simple homemade experiment, actually reveals the properties of sound. It's a wave, and it has a wavelength, and it has an amplitude. Now, we can actually, with that information, we can do some serious science. Okay? Let me show you. Maybe what I need now is some help. Is there anybody here, maybe a gentleman who can? Are you a good singer? Can you hold a tone? Come and help me out here. Come and try it here. So a round of applause, please, from Ms. Oliver. Thank you. So you've got to cup your hands. If you kneel down a bit, cup your hands. And what works well are sort of ooh noises. So it could be ooh, ooh, ooh. And try and find a tone and hold it. You can do it. A bit louder. Higher and ooh. Okay. Dobře. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Ms. Oliver. So what I've done now is I've measured his wavelength. This is the size of the gentleman's wavelength, of the gentleman's ooh, and it's about 0.5 meter long. So the understanding the wavelength of our noises is very important. That property has many consequences. The fact that sounds are 0.5 meter, a meter in wavelength determines its physical properties. It's the reason why if I hold this chair in front of me, you can't see me, but you can hear me. And you can hear me because the wavelengths are so big, it can go around the object. Whereas you can't see me because light is completely different. Light is 1,000,000 times smaller in wavelength. It's 1,000,000 times faster. If I do ooh here, ooh, the air molecules go into order, ooh, the wave travels at about 300 meters a second. That means my ooh goes to the back of the room, rebounds and goes like this 30 times in that second. Whereas light would do it a lot more. It could go 8.5 times around the Earth or to the moon in the same length of time. Because it's so small, the wavelengths are so small. So they're so small that this chair absorbs all the light reflecting from me, so you can't see me. But the sound can go around like this because it's so big, the wavelength is so big. Your ooh is 0.5 meter big. Now, that explains, for example, this simple demonstration explains why we can hear things that we cannot see. Like when somebody shouts at you from around the corner. But it also allows us to do some technology. It allows us to think about how can we use this new discovery about the properties of sound. And here's just one example. Now, some call it the sound cannon. I think it's very similar to an audio like laser. Okay? Now, the reason is because it works in the following method. What this essentially does is it allows us to trap sound waves in a box. And if we get certain things correct, it can lead to the amplification of the energy that this sound has. Okay? Now, you can probably guess why it's this big. Why do you think it's this big? Because we're talking about sounds, and we've just discovered we're looking at about 0.5 meter, 60 centimeters, 80 centimeters big. So we want to trap waves, sound waves. We need to get the size right, so it's got to be about this big. Now, what I want to do is I want to get the sound wave to keep bouncing from one end to the other like this. And as it does so, it's going to engender more and more energy inside. So I need to sort of start up that energy process, and I do that by having a drum here. So I can generate a sound wave. And I've got the sound wave inside the box, and it goes up and down, up and down, up and down, at 300 meters per second. So we're looking at, in 1 second, it's gone there and back about 65 times. Now, I've got it open about 15%. This is about 15% of the area. That allows some of the energy to come out. So I can amplify the sound energy and allow some of it to come out. And this has a tremendous effect. So, for example, if I were to generate a sound wave now to you, you probably can't feel it. But if I use the same energy with my sound amplifier, my sound cannon, then you can. So, in fact, so you can demonstrate this nicely, if I can ask some of you to put a polystyrene cup on your head. Please, if you could, take a few, spread them around. If I could ask you, madam, thank you, onto the top of your head, ladies, ladies, if I could ask you to put them around. So, are you ready? Excellent. So by understanding the simple properties of sound and its general property of wavelength, we can put together something which can do something. It amplifies the energy of sound, and I can shoot a polystyrene cup off somebody's head, which perhaps isn't so useful, but nevertheless, I'm going to come to a greater point. Is this? Yeah. What I'm going to do now, can I ask you to put it back onto your heads, please? And I'm going to fill the drum with some molecules of smoke that you can actually see. So now you'll be able to see the sound wave that I'm generating. And look what it looks like. But can you see that? The shape? It's like a smoke ring, like Gandalf's smoke rings. Now, those smoke rings, that's where all the energy is. So what this device is doing, in effect, is it's because sound energy normally spreads in all directions equally. But this instrument is amplifying that energy, and it ejects the energy as a single ring. All the energy is in one little place. Now, do you know what this is exactly analogous to? It's exactly analogous to this. Lasers, which is something I work with. In my laboratory at the Academy of Sciences, I do work at making molecules that can generate light. Okay? And then at other institutions, they're able to work on developing instruments that can, something like this, for light. This is the equivalent of the laser for light, right? It works exactly the same, apart from it's got to be hundreds of thousands of times smaller in dimensions. So the same way as if I hit that, I get a ring of concentrated amplified energy. If I press this, I've got battery, this is all batteries, and at the end there, it converts the electrical energy into excites molecules like the kind that I make in my laboratory, which then generate light, and the light rebounds and forms, here's like the equivalent of the smoke ring for the laser light. It's just a beam of coherent light energy, right? Which is all amplified in that bit over there. So you can follow it around as it goes over here. And these molecules are wonderful what you can do with them. If I take this off. See, if I remove this, I'll explain it maybe a little bit better. Here we go, I'll stand back here, maybe you can see it. So, what you've got is you've got this amazing molecule here, right? And this molecule is on a, if my laser's going to work, physics for you. Oh. The molecule's got a ground state of an energy ground state. My laser's not working very well. So it's got a ground state of energy here, and if we use electrical energy, oh dear, oh well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I can do a little drawing maybe. It's not going to work. My laser's gone out. There's the physics for you. It's new batteries, it's the laser's gone. Okay. What I wanted to explain to you is it works in exactly the same with light as it does with sound. So, we've got at the end of the laser here, right at the end, we've got the battery, which is the energy, and at the end we've got the gain medium, the material that generates light, which is positioned between two mirrors, and that light comes off at the same wavelength and it rebounds amongst the mirrors in the same way as the sound rebounds against the ends here. And if we make one of those mirrors slightly transparent to light, then some of that amplified energy escapes as a laser beam in exactly the same way. So light and sound have all these relations between them. And these relations between them are extremely interesting. Light, of course, as I said, is 1,000,000 times quicker. The wavelengths are 1,000,000 times smaller. The waves are slightly different. But nevertheless, we can combine these two aspects to actually do some really cool science. Allow me to show you here. So what we're going to do is we're going to combine the two to show something which is much of a modern technology. I don't know if you have mobile telephones with you, but often when we're listening to music now, there's no need to link it up to some sort of big gramophone with this sort of instrumentation to amplify the sound. We usually just link up via Bluetooth to our own headsets or to a speaker which is just without any cables along the Bluetooth. It works very nicely. Now this technology is actually very simple, and all you need to understand is how sound works and how light works. Okay? So over here to demonstrate the principle, what I've got over there at the back, you see there's Tomasz over there, and I'll use a pointer here. I'm shining on a simple instrument that is able to convert light into electrical energy. It's a solar panel. Okay, it's a solar panel from a children's toy. And how it works is very simple. It uses semiconductors. So the device is two layers, one on top of the other. And they're both the layers are made from silicon. But in the top layer, for every millions of atoms of silicon, there's the odd atom of phosphorus. Now, phosphorus is a similar size to silicon, but it's got an electron more than silicon. So it's got some free electrons. And on the bottom layer, it's exactly the same, but instead of phosphorus, there's some boron, my favorite element. And boron has only 3 electrons in its valence shell, so it has 1 electron less than silicon. So there's electron holes in the bottom layer. So top layer's got 3 electrons, bottom layer's got electron holes. Now, if we excite those free electrons in the top layer, what they do is they take on the energy and they jump down into the bottom layer. And that movement of electrons is an electrical current. And that's how we can convert light into electricity. Now, what I've done is we've taken that device and we've just put a wire that joins the two layers. So the electrons have to jump down the wire to get to the bottom layer. And that wire goes through our speakers. So the electrons, when they jump down, they get excited, they jump down, and they go through this whole system, through the speaker, and back down to the bottom layer. Rozumíme si? Yeah? Okay. So let's see if we can then use sound. Let's see if we can then convert this light into sound by passing that current, ten uspořádaný pohyb elektronů, through our speakers. So we can turn it on. Okay, now listen very carefully. If I try to excite some of those. Isn't that amazing? You're actually hearing electrons becoming excited and jumping down, traveling through the speakers and coming back at the speed of light. And that is all you need to understand to make Bluetooth. So if I change this laser for this other laser over here, Tommy, do you want to come over with your... Here's another laser which is on a stand. You might have to duck your heads a little bit. Now I'm going to go over here, Tommy. Take your time, Tommy. So, and if you look at Tomáš, so Tomáš is linking up the laser to his linking up to the laser to his mobile telephone. And on his mobile telephone, he has his favorite songs, okay? And the favorite songs are in electrical files. Now, if he turns on the electrical file, if it's linked through the laser, what happens is the intensity of the laser, so how many photons per second are emitted, depends on the electrical signal from his MP3 song. You with me? And that changing intensity of light, if it falls on our if it falls on our solar panel, then that changing frequency of electricity leads to a changing intensity of light, which then leads to a changing frequency of jumping electrons, which go through the speakers, and if you play it, watch the... And we can hear Diamonds Are Forever. So Diamonds Are Forever are on that beam of light. So that the intensity of that light's changing according to the frequency of the music. And then the electrons are jumping through the cable and coming back at the same frequency. And because there's an electromagnetic speaker in there, it's sending pressure waves which we are able to receive, and it generates a movement of air molecules that we can hear as James Bond's Diamonds Are Forever. So you can see, I don't know diamonds are forever, but certainly the characteristics of sound waves and light waves are forever. And if you just understand simple things about sound, you can put together quite complicated devices. This is how Bluetooth technology works. This is how modern technology of transmission of data works. And it's simply from an understanding of the basic principles of wavelength and amplitude and frequency that sound and light share to enable us to, unfortunately, throw away our gramophone and bring up this sort of light and sound technology together. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention, and I give the floor to Dr. Markéta